Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Live Free, Ride Free. I'm your host, Rupert Isaacson, New York Times bestselling author of The Horse Boy and The Long Ride Home. Before I jump in with today's guest, I want to say a huge thank you to you, our audience, for helping to make this happen. I have a request. If you like what we do here, please give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, tell a friend. It really, really helps us to make the progress. To find out about our certification courses, online video libraries, books, and other courses, please go to rupertisaacson.com. So now let's jump in. Welcome back to Live Free, Ride Free. Jason Barrett has put his life in service to people with special needs. Obviously, that's dear to my heart because I've done a rather similar thing. But I kind of had to do it because obviously I'm an autism dad. Jason and his wife, Sise, who, by the way, you will want to go across to our Equine Assisted World work podcast and listen to her incredible interview story there. But even though she's the sort of horse person behind that, Jason has built an extraordinary family business around theater, performance, special needs, neuroplasticity, and living life sort of on his own terms along the way. When I first met Jason, which I think was in 2018, he struck me as somebody who would see no obstacles in life because you shouldn't be able to make a living through this sort of weird mix of equestrian theatre, autism, living life on the road as a sort of performance gypsy, let alone like raise a family and the whole thing and make a go of it. And yet he has. And I think we all kind of want to run away with the circus. So as the man that we might be running to, if we do that, I want to welcome Jason to the show. And so Jason, thanks so much for coming on. You're one of my heroes. Tell us.
Super, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk with you and hang out with like-minded people.
What possessed you to do something so, on the face of it, impossible to make a living at when you could have just gone to law school or something?
Well, I could have done that. That would have been an option. I think, first of all, you've got to look all the way back, and I have to give credit to a fortunate life. I was born under great conditions. I was born in the United States with a family who loved and cared for me under conditions that allowed for growth. There's a lot of people that don't start that way. So that would be the first thing. Obviously, you got to have a decent start. Otherwise, you may have some obstacles to overcome. And as far as my life has gone, there's been no real obstacles like that.
That's a very honest thing to say because a lot of people want to sort of virtue signal by saying, well, I bootstrapped it and I came out of poverty and so on. I do know that you did bootstrap it. I know that you're being very modest there. But it's interesting that you start with gratitude for the life circumstances. I think so many of us who grew up in the West completely take for granted and have a bit of a sense of entitlement to just the fact that we are born here and not in war-torn Sudan or something. And it's a very valid point. Okay, so you're born in the US. Where are you born?
Born in Jacksonville, Florida, down on the beautiful East Coast of Florida. Moved shortly thereafter to Mobile, Alabama, where what became home from 3 years old on. And I guess as far as attention with the special needs world and that type of how that became such a huge part of my life, which it absolutely did, was I was introduced, and we're in the Southern Baptist Bible Belt down here, so we were good Baptists.
Amen.
Heading to school to play basketball or up to the church to play basketball and hear the word. And so I was part of the youth group at that time. And there was a really great youth pastor. A lot of preachers get condemnation from some folks. This was one of those honest, true to life people, a heartfelt guy. He recognized in me, just from our interactions with the youth group and things, and went to my mother and said, hey, you know what? I've had this camp call and they need hands on deck. It's for mentally retarded children and adults, which was the term used at the time. And I think that Jason has a good heart for this kind of work. He could probably help it. I was 12 years old at the time. So 12 years old. That's what they thought. So he said, yeah, let's give it a try. I was willing. I wanted to do that. I did already enjoy helping others and found the joy and satisfaction in serving other people. And so anyway, I went, gave it a shot. Had no idea what I was walking into. I walked into a line of full grown men. There was a 6'3" black dude that was twice as wide as I was, who was getting pretty irate in the line. And then they introduced me to my 49-year-old camper, this old man who can't speak, and he's drooling on himself. And this was my introduction to the special needs community at 12 years old. So
Wow.
it was perfect. Absolutely perfect.
What was your reaction?
My reaction was just shock and awe at first. Like, oh boy, what did I get myself into here? But I was willing. I showed up. I'm not one to, turn away when I
There must have been a little bit of fear though. I mean, big autistic adults, it's not easy.
It's shocking. It was a little bit of fear, but it calmed down very soon. The air in the place at that time, this was before internet. This was before you had to show up in person to sign your documents. You had to meet everyone who passed through the line. That was going on. So it's a different era. It's hard to talk about things now in the light of that. But the air from that moment was just this big cooperative scene of happy people waiting to get in the lunch line, and everybody's kind of herding cats. They're doing their part to help whoever they're working with do the best job they can. And I jumped right in feet first and stayed there from 12 to about 20 each year for about 5 weeks out of the summer. I and a bunch of others showed up there to be volunteers and help.
This was Camp Smile, right?
Camp Smile. This was Camp Smile. Also,
why did it grab you so much? I can tell you, I at 12 or in my teens, I would have run a mile.
Yeah, and most people do. I don't know. It was just innate, a part of me. Even when I tried to transfer out into the regular workforce, the idea of not helping someone directly it just didn't make me feel like I was in sync with what I should be doing. So direct help is something.
Can you just tell us a little bit though, about what was the internal process? I mean, what do you think made you go, yes, this is for me?
I would have probably, it was be after the fact that I got started. So maybe a week into that first week, I knew where I was after that first week of working with that man. His name was David DeRocher, and he was very mild behavior. Like I said, 49-year-old man. And during the time that I worked with him that week, it opened my eyes to the fact that most of us don't have any problems. You can pretend you do, but until you've worked in this world and you see what families go through and you see the lack of hope that just wells up and how the tiniest effort can change everything in those situations, you really learn to be grateful. You learn. So I really attribute my basic character to my understanding at that camp with those. And I give a lot of credit to everything we've done to the special needs humans who raised me while I was a young teenager, helping them.
How do you think they raised you? How did the special needs people raise you?
There's this, it depends, because everyone is an individual. So you're talking about a group of people that are incredibly individualistic. And some of those, you learn lessons. You learn lessons from some of these folks, when one, just the lifestyle of them and their family, the need to get up and put your next foot forward, regardless. Sometimes shaking off the problem is exactly what you do. And in this population, some people don't even see the problem. There is no problem. So there's these tiny, tiny lessons you can learn from a population that doesn't think and breathe and live the same way you do. And you've learned that obviously from your travels around the world. We are so different, and yet there's all these tiny connections, if you're paying enough attention, that can build something new in you. So for me, it was seeing that these folks are willing to smile, have a great time, the forgiveness and the kindness that you see, the connection that you can make because of the lack of layers of humanity that's grown on top of our faces as we go through life. Those layers are peeled back, much like working with the horses. It's just, you get an easy answer from a horse. Yes or no. I like this. I don't like this. And it builds room for communication. The same thing, this communication between us was so simple at the time. Sometimes it's just a sit and a stare and a look, and you're waiting for something, a light in the eye that changes. And when you notice it, and then you notice it again, then you realize, hey, there's a person in there. There's a personality there. And that just grabbed me. I wanted to help that. I wanted to be a part of helping that.
You used the word forgiveness just now. That's an interesting choice of words. What did you learn about forgiveness as a teen growing up with these folks?
It just seemed like, intention really means something. Intention means something. And a lot of people can get caught in the action or the word and ignore the intention that was meant. And maybe that was a mistake, a wrong word. Maybe you did the wrong thing at the wrong time. But the forgiveness aspect, learning from them, is that whatever mistakes there were to happen, if you were late, if you lost their shirt, or they didn't come back with their favorite cup, the next day, if you were still investing in them and their time, that was gone. There was an opportunity to rebuild almost immediately in most cases of the people that I've worked with. It seems like that's able. Now, I could imagine through nurture, that you could be developed in a different way, and somebody could be very skittish. And there have been people that I've met, that I've seen, that may have been abused along the way, or were hurt people that don't respond the same way. But in general, that's it. You get a second chance without a slap in the face, or, without the grief.
So you're really talking about people forgiving you your mistakes.
Yeah, people forgiving. Yeah, just learning to forgive. Basically learning to forgive, because either it's a non-issue and you shouldn't have made that big of a deal of it in the first place, or it's something that can be passed over for the value of your relationship, or it's something you have to handle directly. Maybe they're doing something wrong that day and you really have to make sure they understand this is not a safe behavior. You cannot do this. That may be different, and they may hate you in the moment, but it just seems like there's always that opportunity to start over in that population. You have a chance to help.
Can you talk about, how did you work with these people at Camp Smart? Like, how did you organize their day? What was the structure of it? And then through that and those activities, what did you learn about human development, neuroplasticity, how the brain works?
We had a structure like a typical camp program. You'd wake up and have a day full of activities, and it's scattered in between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it was a little different in that the intimacy of the closeness to each other was necessary, because you had to take care of these. They couldn't shower themselves, bathe themselves, use the restroom themselves. A lot of times we had wheelchairs that were total paraplegics, and diapers. So you've got a range of, at that time, 12 to 20-year-olds who are leading this under a couple of incredible mentors in my life, Sise Lowell and Martha White. They were two of the directors that were at the time, and they had a real heart for it, and the social ability. I really learned a lot from both of them about being open, leading a group, keeping engagement involved. So anyway, that's the days were set up like that. We'd get up, get everybody ready, have breakfast, and start some events. And that event would depend on what your camper was capable of doing. Not everybody could do the same thing. So you might be playing baseball that day and your camper can't hold a bat, or maybe he doesn't have arms. There's no telling. So you're going to find some creative way to play that game with them, and we'd follow them through the game. So nothing was necessarily required outside of the organization of having people in the right places, but you'd be introduced to an activity, to a dance, just like any other normal camp. So the point was to give them an opportunity at a life that felt like what us normies get, the opportunities that we may have at a camp situation like that.
How do you help someone with no arms play baseball?
Well, you can do a lot of things. You can hold the bat between your knees. If they're sitting in a wheelchair, they could hold the bat between their knees, drop the tee down low, and you turn the wheelchair and let them smack it. And it's a small hit. And these tiny victories, sometimes that's a problem with some of these young kids that look at these games and look at what these people can do. And it's so limited that it's, they may laugh at it, or they may think it's, what is the point of it? But when you spend the time with the person who's engaged in it and they've never had the opportunity to do that before, it becomes a whole new thing. So you can find a joy and excitement in that if you're willing to look. So yeah, there's ways you could do that. It may be a situation where you slide your arms around him and hold the bat for them or her and hit the ball, whatever you have to do to make them a part of the thing so that they're not sitting on the sidelines. That was my introduction to the special needs world and that population. And it was always, as you mentioned before, nothing stops you. You're going to get to the next event. You're going to go to the next thing. Everybody's going to get a chance to participate. We're going to make it happen, whatever that obstacle is. And man, those are some great foundations.
Great foundations. But it still blows my mind that you, as a American teen boy, or whatever nationality,
Right.
dealing with, adult diapers. What what do you think was your special superpower that you could do that and be required to do that? And at that age, not with some later maturity, but at that age, because the teenage years, we are hardwired, as you know, the human brain is hardwired to be self-absorbed. The brain is not growing, all the same pieces at the same time, and we know that nature designs us at sort of toddlerdom and adolescence to go through these periods of self-absorption where you sort of formulate first the personality of childhood and then the personality that will lead you into adulthood. But they come with this, yeah, almost a kind of a built-in narcissism that doesn't really usually go with like adult diapers. That blows my
It
mind.
makes sense.
Why? What's different about your brain?
There was no, now there are no saints in the room here. So there's plenty of looking back and thinking, man, that was a stupid decision, or wow, I could have been a little more considerate about that. So first of all, let's right the ship. There was no perfect role going there, but we had a great community at the time there. So coming into the camp, it was already established. So I think there had to be mentorship. There had to be somebody that directed that path, because that wasn't intrinsic to me yet at the
Yeah.
time. I took these things from those opportunities. So that would be the thing, mentorship. And it's something we learned, especially when we started developing Sise School of Equestrian Arts for therapeutic horseback riding, was that it really dawned on me later in life, as I got involved in other states and places with the special needs community, that there is just a time frame, just like everything else. And I believe fully between 8, 10 years old, 14, 15 years old, that is a special time in development. And that is a time you can take a child and inspire them, and that inspiration stick and become something. I feel like, and I'm not, obviously things can happen at any time, but man, that is a sweet spot. And I've learned that over and over again as we've sent generations of teenagers through our volunteer program, that, if you catch them at 16, or, they might be a little too late when they're driving around and have their own interest in their own life, and they can be fully self-absorbed, they can be. But I was doing this, like I said, at 12. I wasn't going anywhere on my own. Camp was the place where I made my friends as well. So there was definitely a community involvement. And when I walked in, the leadership at the time maintained enthusiasm. I mean, it's a big deal in all of these programs that we see around the country, and what we've done ourselves. If there's no enthusiasm in it, it's going to be short-lived. And so that enthusiasm is infectious. So I believe that with it being that, it was a perfect storm for me. It's not the normal story, for sure. As you're alluding to, it's not the normal story, but there were hundreds of other kids that helped out in the same way I did, that were all teenagers. So it's not a lone story. So I think it was the community, the factor that we came in there, that I was interested in doing in the first place. I had a heart and mind for that. That's just how I grew up. And then coming in there and meeting like-minded people with some leadership that were really heartfelt, involved all the way through every aspect of it, to be there walking with you through the steps. That was an infectious time. We had an incredible time at that time period. I've watched it change through the years, and there's been pros and cons that have come and developed, but there was a magic time there. I'm sure you remember some of those times before there were cell phones and recordings, and everybody had to second guess everything with 1,000 choices.
Yeah.
It was just something special in that time. So that was probably what instilled it in me. Like I said, it didn't just start there, but it grew. That's the place that grew my character and the direction that I hope to take my life and future family.
I got a question. It's a bit of a provocative question. You say that this happened through the Southern Baptist Church, yeah?
Yep.
Well, Southern Baptist Church, I've lived in the South a lot, and I've observed some not good things through that church.
Yeah.
And one of the issues of it is it was one of only 2 churches that I know of that sort of wrote a theology designed to justify slavery. The other one is the church of some of my ancestors, which is the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa, which sort of rewrote its rules to allow for apartheid in South Africa, the separation of whites and blacks. And there's an age-old joke where, the white priest, the predikant, as they call them, is coming into church and there's a black person down on their knees. And they said, "What are you doing in here?" Was that, I'm cleaning the floor, boss. And he goes, "Well, all right, but don't let me catch you praying." And but we know that the Southern Baptist Church was related to the Ku Klux Klan. We know that it was, even pre that, came out very, very much in favor of a theology. And you don't actually have to try very hard, because the Old Testament is actually full of slavery, because the old Hebrews kept slaves, as did actually the early Christians in the Roman Empire.
Been around for a long time.
First slaves, sometimes they kept slaves. But point being, you understand what I'm saying. There has been a really toxic relationship with compassion, anti-compassion, really, through the Southern Baptist Church. But you clearly have had an experience with it that was completely the opposite. I find that intriguing. Why do you think that was?
One, I was 12. So these thoughts and these contemplations,
but they were clearly
these thoughts wouldn't have been there at the time. Two, obviously, like everything, it's made up of individuals with different character and different principles, and you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So I guess that's it. For me, that's just who I was. My family was full of love. There was no abuse in my immediate family, whereas there were in the generations before, where there was trauma and stuff. In my immediate household, my parents protected us. We were loved. We had family and friends. So to be there at the church, that was it. I went. It was a comforting place and all that. As I grew and learned more and more about things, and actually one of the biggest things that kind of, there's plenty there's plenty of things to shake your minds on the formulation of humans' idea of religion, but in all its aspects. But the actual camp that we're talking about, Camp Smile, was based out of a campgrounds that was known as the Baptist Assembly. It was owned and operated by them. And so it was a charitable venture. So growing up, I'm just like, oh, this is great. They're helping these people, and we're doing this thing in this camp. As I grew up later on, I realized that costs a shit ton of money. They're making bank down here in this tiny little town where there is no other option. And all the efforts to keep these programs alive. At that time, it wasn't backed by any larger groups. Now it's backed by United Cerebral Palsy, and they run, and they're well funded and all that stuff. So back then it was grassroots still. And so every dime was going to pay this place off, and none of the investment that went back into the property helped the camp at all. For instance, a building was built without wheelchair regulations. So you couldn't fit all the campers in and out of there, and the shower houses and stuff. Ridiculous. So anyway, long story short, there's plenty of bad in each of the religions I've visited. So for me, that was it. I didn't have any other situations I knew of in that church. There was a problem with a pastor who had defiled a child, or there was an issue late. I mean, it's just disgusting. You hear it all the time, and it's disheartening. But at the same time, in that building, there are mothers and families who are loving and accepting and trying to help their kids grow and don't think an ill thought about anyone. So I find that to be true most places I go. Unfortunately, the ugly stuff sticks out, and you have to pay attention to it because it may be a part of the whole program, but
you say the particular youth pastor that you had was not like that. He was actually a particularly good person.
Particularly good person. Yeah. A sweet spirit. When you meet somebody that has a sweet spirit, that has a kind spirit, a kind disposition. And he was that. He was young at the time. I think he was probably only in his early 20s, recently married. He was married it was just a sweet guy. I actually met him years later. I found him. I took him to lunch to tell him how much I appreciated him making that moment, or seeing whatever he did and said that to me, and how much it's developed and how it's helped me build and grow my family and the network of acquaintances we have that are as close as family.
Mm.
So yeah, he was a genuine guy. He was one of the guys who brought out that situation against one of the pastors that had happened in the place. So it was tough. It was a tough thing then. I was a child. I knew nothing about it, heard things
Mm.
later on, but it seems to be pretty normal everywhere. Yeah. So
Sadly.
I gave up the organized religion thing a while ago. I believe there's something amazing and bigger out there, but I'm not smart enough to tell you or anybody else what it is. So
Yeah.
we keep
Well, at
looking.
what point did you, I want to go in obviously to the career
Yeah.
that you've had and how you've built this incredible world that you have with this thing called Equestrian Chaos, which is of course actually anything but chaotic because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
requires ridiculous amounts of structure, but it's a
A lot of
spectacular
organization.
thing that you guys do. But just before we start going to how you and Sise put that together and made a go of it, at what point did you move away from religion? Because, it can be very difficult when you grow up with those supports to not become really attached to them just culturally.
Mhm.
And also from a point of view of, safety or perceived safety, security, perceived security, and that sort of thing. It's difficult to leave. What was the process?
I think first I'd have to say our relationship with the church was casual in the beginning. It was, I mean, we were there. I was young and filled with the Holy Spirit and everything that was going on in the room, but my family's relationship was fairly casual with the church. So we weren't
Okay.
every Sunday goers and all that stuff.
So you're very much in this church-based thing from 12 to 20, but yet at a
Right. Well,
certain point
the
you move
church
away
thing
from it.
faded. Yeah. Okay. I'm back with you. The church thing sort of faded during those years as a teenager would grow and do things that a teenager would enjoy to do that go against the Holy Bible. But so there was a little decline there. And, but still that was in my heart. It was a desire. I wanted people to have the best thing in the world, and the best thing in the world was going to heaven.
Yeah.
That's what I learned. Why would you not want to do that? That's the best thing you could have, is to end your life in paradise. So that was it. But like I said, it faded away. Really wasn't much of a consequence. I'm becoming a graduate. Parents divorced. I'm kind of doing my own thing back and forth out of college. And then I had a instance where a guy knocked on my door, one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He knocked on the door. He said to me, so we're just walking through the neighborhood and talking today about, where do you see the state of the world and where it's going? And I said, well, I think it's good, but it's kind of rough now. It's probably going to get worse and it'll get a lot better. And that was let's get him out the door and finish this conversation quickly. And he was like, oh man, that's a very insightful thing. Anyway, that conversation led to 2 years of studying the scriptures with this guy, a
How
couple
old were you
days a
then?
week. I was 18,
Okay.
18, 19 or so then.
The
So
Jehovah's
I
Witnesses
decided,
got you for a while.
oh yeah, they got me for a little bit. Sure did. So we studied the Bible a little bit, and that's when the pictures of religion started to crumble. What I liked about that is that they were doing the work that I had heard all these churches were supposed to be doing the whole time I was in church, where they were actually walking around and really talking to people, telling them about Jesus and how great life was, stuff like that. So that was appealing, that they were actually doing the work. I was sort of in turmoil because I wasn't sure where I was going to go from there. University was a drag. I did not enjoy the things I was learning at the time, didn't seem to have a place to go with it. I wanted to be an occupational therapist, and then I did some work in the field and realized that turned into very specific work that you do over and over again forever. And so that appeal was gone. So anyway, so then I decided I'd help people find their way to forever. So then I
Yeah.
started with the Jehovah's Witness, preaching and teaching. I did that for about 2 years, moved to Georgia, where I did this walking through the streets, held Bible studies with folks. And as much as I look back at that and go, yeah, that's just another religion created by men, after the fact, the lessons I learned at that time, I would hate to give up. I learned
What
to
did you
speak to
learn?
people under the worst circumstances. You're going door to door, speaking interpersonally with folks, giving lectures in big halls, all the things that came to be something that would be a valuable contribution to my family and my life in the future were nailed in strong in 2 years. You walk up to somebody's door who doesn't want to talk about the Bible that's that's a tough conversation. And you walk up to somebody's door who wants to talk about the Bible. That's a tough conversation.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could happen in between there. So yeah, what a learning opportunity that was for me. But in the big picture of religion and all that stuff, it just boiled down to these are men's, they're taking a stab at things older than everything they know, and decisions and words passed down through generations by mouth before they ever hit the pen. It just all kind of flows the same. So from then on, I vowed to engage my surroundings, everything in my world that I could touch or influence. There's my religion. There's my spirituality. I want to give
But
as much
how
love
did
and
you
spread
go?
it.
The Jehovah's Witnesses don't like to let people go. How did you get away from that?
There's a lot of there's a lot of stories in both directions about how things work. It was very simple. I just didn't go anymore. It was
Okay.
there's
But
no lockdown
what for you
procedures and things like
was
that.
the deciding factor that
For
made
me,
you
the
go?
deciding factor was, well, the contemplations that I was having about, okay, where do the roots of this go? What drew me in was the tight knit community, the appreciation for learning and for understanding, for actually doing the work. That's what drew me in. I even traveled to London with a family, stayed there for a while, and learned same thing, regardless of what continent we were on. They had a similar thing. There was lots of dark things in there too that I've learned over the years afterwards or have heard about. But anyway, that was what drew me in the beginning. That's what it was. It was a good community, and they were teaching and doing the stuff they said they were going to be doing.
Right, but what then made you think you wanted to leave?
That was when I was realizing that all of these things are just the contemplations of men.
Yeah.
These things, doesn't matter how you get there. It doesn't matter if they're right or they're wrong. They could be. And they came from the thoughts of men trying to organize ideas that were too big for them to grasp. And that began it. And then I saw in that particular situation, there was a friend of mine that was working for a guy I didn't like those situations so well. I thought he was kind of being taken advantage of. And I said, you know what? I think we're just right back at square one again. So we're out. And that
Okay.
was it. That was the end of it.
And then you're 20. So did you go off to college?
I did. I went to college for a little while at the University of South Alabama. And then after I left the Witnesses, I started in the corporate world. Went to, like I mentioned, I wanted to do occupational therapy, found out that wasn't it. Got a job right after working with the Witnesses with Kohl's department stores, traveling the country and setting up new stores and new areas and stuff. So that was great. I got a taste of travel, but then that became the same thing as everything else, retail. You're filling shelves with shit so that people can pick it up and throw it away. I just can't see where that could be satisfying life for me. Anyway, so that had to go. And then, of course, I decided it's a wild life. I've changed a lot of things. So from there, I decided that I needed to be interacting with people. I wanted to help people individually again. So I decided to be a massage therapist. However, actually, a note that I am proud of, during that time with Kohl's, I was able to, when it was getting depressing to be in that type of work lifestyle, I was able to integrate a special needs program at the store. So we were
Okay.
able to bring in employees with special needs. Had a guy with Down syndrome and a guy with traumatic brain injury and a guy with autism. They were able to come in the store, and they were working with a local organization there. But that ended up working out. And even 15 years later, one of those guys still had his job at that store. So it was pretty cool.
Okay.
We did a couple of foundation walks, met some really beautiful people. And more importantly than that, I got people in the store accustomed to being around those people with special needs and finding something cool about them, where they could slap high five and be in a store with people that worked there for 15 years and have a relationship. So that was really fun. So that was a little touch back into the special needs department while I was trying to find myself
Mm.
again.
Okay. So tell us now what you do now, and then we're going to backtrack to how you got that going. In a nutshell, tell us what you do.
So now, if we scratch everything I've just told you, we are a traveling, performing family through Equestrian Chaos. I am the MC for my family. We perform on stage doing horseback archery and acrobatics around the country. We're in our 4th year of coast to coast national travels. All of that spawned from the heart of everything we do: Sise School of the Equestrian Arts, our therapeutic horseback riding program. And Equestrian Chaos was just the backyard fundraiser for it that ended up saving the day. So right now we run both Equestrian Chaos, an incredible trick riding troupe and archery troupe that travels the country, and we run Sise School of the Equestrian Arts. an innovative therapeutic horseback riding program that marries trick riding and performance arts with therapeutic horsemanship.
Okay. And you're the MC. And of course, the person that, organizes it and keeps it going. In that story you told us about childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood, I didn't hear anything about horses.
Not a drop. There were two stories. We were at a barn party, and one of my buddies says, "Hey, you think we could ride those horses?" And so we hopped on the horses and came off very quickly. And then one other time I was trying to date a girl and she had horses. So I went for a ride with her. Same result. Truck flew by on the road. Horse jumped. I came off and walked my way back to the barn to find the horse and the girl. But that was it. So yeah, horses were a new concept to me when I met my beautiful bride.
Okay. So talk to us about that.
So that would take us back to leaving a job that was not for me, for something I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. So I decided to become a massage therapist. Another line, which again helped me incredibly later on. So I took a job, went to a school in Florida near Orlando, who was owned by the parent company that owns all the spas on the cruise ships. So I had an idea to travel internationally to find the next step while I was doing something I could enjoy doing. That was the whole plan. Everything was set and done. That was where it was going to go. And it started that direction, but it didn't finish there. So I flew down to Orlando, started training, found a job at the Dolly Parton Dixie Stampede. No longer called such because those words are bad, but this weird.
And what was the Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede, and why did you get a job?
It was a dinner show. It was a theater dinner show.
While she stampede?
Yeah, definitely. So massage therapy school during the day, working at the Stampede at night. I was a waiter there. There was a huge
it was like a dinner
theater
show, right?
It was a dinner theater, massive dinner theater.
And it was an equestrian show?
It was an equestrian show, yeah. They did a north versus the south type of trick riding and flags and dance and all kinds of stuff. That's the way it ran. And Sise was a performer in there. And I noticed her very quickly from the stands above as she was riding around. And so we made our acquaintance and turned that into a hot and heavy 8-month romance with our own plans and intentions. She had painted the backdrop for a 7th generation Italian circus family and was planning to go on the road with their youngest troops heading out. And I had made arrangements in London to train and travel the world. So we took off, willing to separate and leave our lives behind for the new lives we had.
In different directions.
Different directions completely. So I make it to London, and on a payphone, I found out there's a bun in the oven. We've got a little baby cooking down there in mama's belly. So we had no intention of getting back together. And at the time, finding that news very striking and quite uncomfortable, considering I'd sold my car and moved. We were gone. Total separation. So anyway, it was a tough time. Finding that beautiful bit of information out can sometimes be tough, and it was tough for us. So we didn't want to commit to each other just because of that. We wanted to commit to each other for the reasons of love and a desire to live together and strive for it. So we didn't make that commitment right away, but I did return, got my contract cut short. We met each other in Tampa, Florida, where she was living at the time. And that's about it. That's pretty much the transition where we brought it to Mobile and began building everything we have. So we were in Tampa, big city, not the place for us. I knew the connections I had here in Mobile with some incredible people and opportunities. So I took us, we sold everything we had at a yard sale. This is fun. We made $1,300. We had a Honda Element that she had bought earlier before I come back from the cruise ship. We bought a $900 2-horse trailer. We piled everything we had into the back of the Honda Element, hooked up a trailer and 2 horses, and drove to Mobile to see what we could do on $1,300. So that was the start of our adult life.
And you with no horse experience.
0 horse experience whatsoever.
But you found yourself hooked to a very driven and organizationally minded horse person.
Oh yeah, sure I did. You know it so well. Yeah, we had a plan. She had everything organized. We had Nope. Yeah. None of that. There was no plan. As you can tell, the life just keeps changing from one
Yeah.
interesting dimension to the next. So this was the next. So I
So
brought her home. Go ahead.
also she's at this stage a performer, equestrian performer. Well, that's not going to happen when you're pregnant. And
Nope.
it might not happen for a while after the baby arrives. So what was the plan economically at that point?
Economically was to come back and I'd work as a massage therapist. We'd get side jobs. We had a connection through camp that was happy to have us come and have our horses on their property for a
So
while
Camp
until we could
Smile
get
came
ourselves
through
established. Came
to
through
let
again.
you
Yeah.
stable the horses.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There was one of the old camp moms that was a mother of one of the guys that was the same age I was at the time. She had a husband that was a horseman. They had a property and a farm with plenty of room, and 2 horses wasn't too much. So we came back, and knowing nothing, we pull into the yard at 2 o'clock in the morning, way late, 4 or 5 hours late the first time we met them, in 10 years or so. That's kind of the way we rolled. We had no idea what we were doing. We just kept pushing and made it happen, and found incredible people to help us along the way.
As you know, if you followed any of my work, I'm an autism dad, and we have a whole career before this podcast in helping people with neurodivergence, either who are professionals in the field. Are you a therapist? Are you a caregiver? Are you a parent? Or are you somebody with neurodivergence? When my son Rowan was diagnosed with autism in 2004, I really didn't know what to do. So I reached out for mentorship, and I found it through an amazing adult autistic woman who's very famous, Dr. Temple Grandin. And she told me what to do. And it's been working so amazingly for the last 20 years that not only is my son basically independent, but we've helped countless thousands of others reach the same goal, working in schools, working at home, working in therapy settings. If you would like to learn this cutting edge neuroscience-backed approach, it's called Movement Method. You can learn it online. You can learn it very, very simply. It's almost laughably simple. The important thing is to begin. Let yourself be mentored as I was by Dr. Grandin and see what results can follow. Go to this website, newtrailslearning.com. Sign up as a gold member. Take the online movement method course. It's in 40 countries. Let us know how it goes for you. We really want to know. We really want to help people like me, people like you out there live their best life, to live free, ride free, see what happens. Okay. Now, I know your daughter, Marley, and I think we can all agree that it's a very good thing that she came into the world.
Damn good.
She's an incredible performer on horseback. She's also an incredibly talented musician and just a general all-round, radically amazing person. And of course, is a big part of your family. How did Equestrian Chaos begin? And how did you get something that really shouldn't be economically viable unless you're Dolly Parton and can put a couple of million into it and then probably still just walk away with 1 million of the 2 that you put in? How did this come about, and how did you make it work?
Nothing happened just from our efforts. We've had a great community of people involved in what we've done. So that there is credit to be given in making great relationships, and taking the time to care about people enough that they in turn care about you, and you see purpose together. So yeah, between family and the people that helped grow it, that's where that was. But Equestrian Chaos became what it was actually as a saving. I mean, became the saving grace of everything we were doing. We began as Sise's School of the Equestrian Arts before we were a nonprofit. And it started first taking Kristen to Camp Smile again. So when we first moved back to Mobile, as mentioned, I took her to Camp Smile. We had her do some tricks on her horse.
Oh, like a performance for the
campers.
kids.
Yeah, we did a little performance across the field for the campers, maybe 3 or 4 runs, doing some tricks while they were out there. They loved it and everything. It was a great opportunity. It gave me the chance to show her and have my daughter in the place that built me. So that was a very important moment. And then the next year, they were able to leave that Baptist Assembly facility by the grace of another family in town, the Davis and Debbie Pilot family. They offered this remarkable campground to them and 4 other camps. They're a very affluent family here in town, and they made this new campground available. 200 acres, well built, put together, everything that you could need, accessible bathhouses. Just they sunk a ton of money into making this beautiful place for these camps, and that's where we did a lot of our work for nearly 14 years. So those places were built, and then as the camp died off there, the horseback rider, which this is something we could get into too, is horseback camp programs. Man, they're tough to run. So the camp was changing properties, and the director of the horseback program couldn't make it happen. So we got the calls. Sise, the mentor I mentioned before, called me and said, "Hey, do you think you guys could do this?" It's like, I'm sure she can. I was working somewhere else at the time. She's capable. She could do it. I'll help. So, and she had some relationship and interaction with the special need population. She had a cousin that she grew up with and so she knows, but she hadn't had that day-to-day lifestyle. Whatever happens, everything goes. There's a way to work around it that I had developed in that area. So that worked out really well. So we got into the program there. That's how we started, and had no idea about business or the cost of horsemanship or anything at that point. No, absolutely no idea, which would turn around to bite us in the ass big time a couple years down the road.
Okay. How did it bite you in the ass?
Well, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what to ask for. Any new venture without market research and knowing what it is. And when you're in such a niche area, there's not a lot of market research for what we would do and how we would grow that and how it works seasonally. What do you do in the off times and these things? So for an entire week of programming at a camp where we would use 15 to 20 horses, we would see 100 special needs or disabled children or adults per week, and we'd go on a 1.25 mile trail ride around a lake. We went big. I mean, we went really big. We gave everything that we had at the time, and that with about 12 volunteers trained a couple months beforehand and kept up with throughout the year, so they know what they're doing. That was a $3,000 week. and it's embarrassing to say that we thought that could actually work. Years later, we found out we were actually spending money from the rest of our budget just to keep the camps going.
Yeah, I'm sure.
When we finally learned to count it and ask and count the cost and look forward, we were like, wow, this is not sustainable. That was about the time when but it's also a passion. We needed it to happen.
Right. And a learning curve, an apprenticeship.
Learning curve, all that stuff, but it had to happen. It was so good at the place. We're going to keep working and make it happen. And we negotiated to change things, but when you come in, and it's all for nonprofits, and they're supposed to be nonprofit organizations, and nobody makes money, right? You just falls out of the air and works in the programs. So that's the impression that a lot of people get. But that wasn't the case. We were running dry. We had big programs through the year where we'd have 50. We'd do a spring, winter, and fall session at home where we had our own therapeutic riding program that was running. And even with 50 regular students at times, 3 instructors, half of those at times were in the special needs population, we could not make ends meet. We were just, the only reason that we made it work was because of the generosity of the family that I mentioned that gave us a property after seeing the work we did at those campgrounds with those populations. And seeing Equestrian Chaos show, our first shows out there. He was a horse-minded person, and he thought it was incredible. He said that one of his comments were, when you're looking to invest in something, you want to find something that you've never seen before. That was one of the things he said, and this was something he definitely never seen before. So with the things we had and the fit, it was absolutely perfect. Him and his family offered us this beautiful property to start our program, 8-stall barn, beautiful little house. And we lived on that property, raising our family for 12 years. We were on that property. Amazing opportunity.
I remember I visited you on that property. Yeah. It was lovely with the big oaks.
Absolutely.
Okay. You knew nothing about horses, and now you suddenly go into the specialist end of professional horsemanship, serving special needs, which is a specialist thing that takes lots of training by itself. And Usually people get into that after they've already got a couple of decades of horsemanship under their belt, because as we know, the dangers are huge. How did you accelerate that learning curve?
Experience. Well, we went right at it. The need was there, and there was no one else to fill the need.
And
So on the one
I
hand,
guess at least your wife could mentor you to a large degree.
she filled the need for she's an incredible horseman. I mean,
Yeah, she is.
she's been at it for a long time. She's passionate. She's connected to the animal. She just knows things that I don't pick up or see because of her lifetime of experience.
Mm,
Although I learned a lot. There's a lot more to learn. But yeah, so she was all of that. Everything that we needed for horses, she could be that. We needed
mm,
calm horses. We needed rhythmic horses. We didn't know at the time, but the rhythmic horses that we were used to training for the
mm,
performances and the work we did, she did, were just right. And I knew how to communicate and to work very closely with the community and the family. And I had years of over a decade of experience already in that realm. So the two coming together was perfect. And under the like I said, under the mentorship of Sise, the director of Camp Smile at the time, she brought Kristen in. And after that we did a first trial year just to kind of work with it. We'd already been working with some kids, and it went great. We had a great summer season with them. And then she worked it out with, as the camp had been purchased or owned now by United Cerebral Palsy, she worked out a grant for her to go to eQuest and train in the Path International program.
right.
Then it was named something else, but it's become Path
It's called
International.
NARA back then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nora. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So that's where she trained others. She became the first Path certified instructor in Mobile, Alabama when we came
Okay.
back. So that's where we started. Then she got her credentials there. My knowledge was all experiential. I'd been there, lived there, done that. So I was key in training our people on how to treat the population as one of their own.
Mm,
You can only go so far with gloves on. you know, you,
yes.
you have to be in the mix. It only gets so personable when you're still wearing the blue rubber gloves. So you need to know how to talk and feel and help others be comfortable around these loud noises or erratic actions and things like that. It's very uncomfortable for people. I didn't know that because I grew up as a child engulfed in, there's drool falling on me. We got to clean up a diaper. Somebody laughed. I mean, it didn't matter to me, which was something I had to learn, that it really did matter to a lot of other people. Those things
I would
kind of
say
set them
so.
back a little bit.
With all my experience with autism and so on, I still shy away. If I never
Yeah.
see another diaper in my life, I'm good. I'm good.
Hey, look, I'm fine with that too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not signing up for diaper changing, but if it's got to be done, we'll get it done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. So we came back, we started the program there, running our program at home. We were not making ends meet, though we were making enough to survive. It's
Mm,
kind of like it's the blessing and the curse, the golden egg. If it's always there, do you have the drive to strive further than
mm,
what's set? So we had that beautiful place to be provided for us. It made all of our budgeting make believe, in the real world. So we had to adjust for that. And then when we started to try and adjust costs and pricing from that to try to be, there was no chance to bridge that gap. So we were pretty close. And then the COVID came.
ah.
That was our big switch up. That really switched things for us.
So what happened? What did you do? Because the whole
Well, all
business
of our
must have collapsed. Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, most of our programming was large group oriented programming. We couldn't be in large groups anymore. So we lost all of our spring and fall camps, all of our summer camp programming. And all in all, in over 3 years, we ended up operating at a third of our budget, which if we were not in that home, there would have been, it was done deal. And it was close
Yeah.
to the point of being a done deal, as nothing was coming online fast enough. The horses got to keep eating. We've got 10 horses at the time, 10, 12 horses at the time. So that was tough. We were still doing. So 2019, we did our last, as I mentioned, Equestrian Chaos was the backyard fundraiser for our therapeutic riding school. We'd make, a
And what
thousand
did you do
dollars at
in
our
this
school.
backyard fundraiser? Because this has gone on to become a huge show. So
Yeah.
tell us about this backyard fundraiser, Equestrian Chaos.
paper mache masks and kids hopping around over each other's back at a camp. It's just the silliest little playful thing. Introducing horses for those who could start to ride, and eventually we have a team of, at our biggest show, 15 to 16 members on the stage, and half of those are part of our therapeutic riding students. So it began very slow. It was the fun and excitement of the do good work that kept people coming back, for more. So our volunteers
would special needs kids into an equestrian circus performance. Many people would say this can't be done. Others would say it's too dangerous. How did you do it, and how did you do it safely?
Well, my wife is incredible, for one. So she did a lot. Working together, you just take your time. It's little steps, baby steps. So, for instance, we have one of our students was autistic, and he's a hitter, runner. He likes to smack and get out of the way at times.
Lash out and then split.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's quick shot and then gone. Then man, you talk about a runner, man. you gotta work to catch that dude. But that we would work at time. You'd find something he liked. You'd find he happened to like hot Cheetos. So we'd sit him on the horse and hold out a bag of hot Cheetos, and he'd reach down low and start to work on the abdominal side muscles to worry about actually being able to stand up on a moving horse and move his leg off the saddle. Lots of little baby steps starting at.
And what did you eventually get him? What did you eventually get him doing?
Oh, he did. He performed in the show. He was in our last performance. He was standing on the horse in what they call the Hippodrome. So he's standing on the shoulders of the horse, his feet into some straps, tall above the sky in a full extension with lights and sound and everything jamming around
the horse
arena.
Going in a run.
In a circle around the
incredible. Yeah, and this is someone who's barely verbal.
He's nonverbal. Yeah, absolutely nonverbal.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, even I, as a special needs dad who runs equestrian programs, looking on in impressed flabbergastedness.
Yeah,
you guys could do it. I remember when I brought Rowan, my son, out to you guys in 2019, and Elise and the team, Brooke, who's also part of your team, who's so incredible. Shout out to Brooke. Had my son standing up on the back of a horse, and this is despite the fact that he's grown up with horses around me, he has the normal sort of autistic anxiety. But the little structured micro steps that Sise and Brooke took him through, and then the absolute rock solid training that was in that horse, that there was just no question in anyone's mind that one could trust this animal, was like something I travel in 40 countries doing trainings all the time. You just don't see this,
We're aware now, it's always that adage. You can't see yourself. You don't see your children grow up. They're right there with you. All of a sudden they're grown up. It's the same thing with this type of work. For us, it is so normal and so possible. It's hard to imagine someone thinking it's not possible.
Yeah.
Which is, it's hard to see both sides of that coin, when you've already been to this side of it. It's just a matter of slow steps and taking your time and following their lead, much like you've learned in all of your work. It's all about following them.
It is
finding who they are and what they're attracted to.
Following their passion. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to have their passion, and it's got to engage them. It has to engage them. And what we found a lot of times in our therapeutic riding program is that, we'd be good for a few weeks, maybe a few months, maybe even a whole year, but eventually it wasn't enough to keep them engaged. Some could do the same thing over and over forever, but many would lose interest, or especially if they were on the autism spectrum or ADHD, really high functioning, high energy, those people needed something more.
I so agree. I mean, one of the difficulties that I so often encounter with the whole therapeutic riding thing is that it's boring. It's dumbed down. I mean, who wants to be led around in circles slowly for more than a few times?
Right.
And then if it's not going to develop into anything, well, you're probably going to let it go. And then, the work we do with veterans and so on, and, you get someone back from ex-special forces guy back from a hot zone, and you tell him to put a helmet on for safety and lead him or her around in a slow circle, and they're just
Yeah.
laughing at you.
It only goes so far, like nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I think that people intend well, but there's another horrible consequence of it being boring is that the horses get bored.
As you may know, if you've been following my work, we are also horsey folk here, and we have been training horses for many, many years in the manner of the old classical dressage masters. This is something which is often very confusing for people. We shine a light on that murky, difficult stuff and make it crystal clear. If you'd like to learn to train your horse in the manner of the old masters and really have fun and joy for you and your equine, go to our website, heliosharmony.com, sign up as a premium member and begin to take the Helios Harmony course, which will take you from 0 to the piaffe, where the horse is dancing on the spot, in hand, on the ground. And then from there, you can develop out to anywhere you want to. heliosharmony.com to unlock the secrets of the old masters.
I mean, the horses lose enthusiasm as well. These are living creatures just like us. They got to have a purpose and a reason as well. And if you live with them enough, you actually know that firsthand.
Yeah.
So for us, I mean, without our herd, I mean, fortunately, Kristen was an incredible horse person, and she had that training for the type of circus riding, the rhythmic movement of the horse that is required to accomplish all the other feats that you would see them do on the stage, was just the basic. You know, we came here and put a hay ring on the ground, and we're free lunging horses in a hay ring out there. And everyone in town is like, what the hell? How do you do that? Why is your horse not jumping out of the hay ring or stepping over the hay ring? And for me, not being a horse person, I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know you had to have a round pen with walls and panels. I was like, our horses do that in this circle. It's perfectly fine. So there's a measure of training that matters. You know, we have, they were just incredible. She did a wonderful job with our legacy herd, that first one that started us. It's so sad watching them. It's sad and fulfilling watching them move into the retirement life, because we're at that point where we're transitioning to the next herd. And the work that they've done was just incredible. Without the horses, there's nothing. There was nothing.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. But yet the skill levels are insane. So just to paint a picture for listeners and viewers, when you go and see an Equestrian Chaos show, and I think you might want to Google Equestrian Chaos, what you're going to see is badass shit. You're going to see this team of expert girl riders doing mounted archery, but really difficult mounted archery while in the craziest positions on running horses accurately. And then you're going to see them pull all kinds of stunts that are incredibly dangerous and life-threatening. And yeah, you're going to see them Roman riding, standing on the back of two horses, doing extraordinary things. And then you're going to see them bringing special needs people into the show. It's a mind blower. And one of the things which has been so rewarding for me, kind of cheering you guys from the sidelines, I sort of feel like a bit of a little cheerleader with my pom-poms, is you've now achieved this level of success where you travel nationally with this show, as well as maintaining this program at home. How did it transform from this backyard affair? I know COVID happened, you had to rethink. But
that was it.
But you suddenly achieved a kind of level of success which many aspire to, I think, but few achieve. How did you do it?
You have to venture outside of your comfort zone and where you start, for sure.
Well, indeed, but give us
that's a big part.
Actually, how?
So the reason where that matters is that we didn't know what we had here. We didn't know how spectacular what we were doing was. We really didn't. We knew it was great, but we grew it around our family and friends who just saw, oh, that's what you do. You know, that's what you're doing out there. You know, so there's a girl hanging upside down from one foot, shooting a bow and hitting the target. Well, you know, they do that all the time. So this was our backyard. This was our everyday life. And everyone that we knew in this small town of 200,000 that would be around to see it, there was no real growth or excitement there. The minute COVID hit, and we had to shut down our programs with the therapeutic riding. We took our act to a circus as an act. We put it in the show. And then from a real performance audience, an audience who came for paid professional performances, they went nuts. You know, they thought it was absolutely incredible. The performers we were working with, they thought it was incredible. It was like, we pulled things off that they didn't think would happen. If something looked like it was going to go wrong, it was fixed. We run a tight ship. Aside from the chaos in the name, we expect our show to be like clockwork. We're gonna,
The chaos comes from the audience sitting on the edge of their seat, expecting a wreck.
Yeah, they don't know what they're about to see. No one knows it. We've found on the road that even if you go, so we're online everywhere. Equestrian Chaos, equestrianchaos.com is our website. We've got a video, talks about our family and some really cool videos. There's lots of stuff out there. But traveling around the country, we've come to find that at any location we go to, it's a 2 to 3 year lull before they actually figure out what the hell they're on the stage. So it's been really exciting. This in our third year in some of our locations, people are showing up. So we'll do a series of 2 to 4 shows a day, depending on what we're engaged with. And that first show is generally lagging a little bit, but not anymore. Now people know who we are, and we're showing up at the very first show. There's just packed out with people, and they've come to see it. So it's really neat. So in that vein, while we were home, there was none of that. The minute we went out to the circus, we heard that. We're like, wow, that's something. Then we got a job somebody called us. We got a job for another fair. We went and tried that. Blew their minds. That's when we had, I think that was the first one. We had a lady walk up to the side of the arena after the show. And she was in her 70s, and she was a stout woman, an intimidating woman. Like, she could probably whoop my ass. And she had a grimace on her face as she came to the rail, and she was already tearing up, like trying to hold her grimace for some reason, but still crying. And she said, you guys have just put on display for me a 70-year dream. I was the first woman to ever compete in the United States in mounted horseback archery when they didn't want us to ride. And what you just did, as she's crying the whole time. And I'm like, damn, I had no idea. That's the connection I'm used to because of our life with the work and the population we're in. You get to feel heart very often in that population. When you give, you get it. And so this was that under this new circumstance. So for me, that was a big moment to credibly, I don't know, just to impress on me how this can affect people, how people can take this art so deeply. And now since then, hundreds of other conversations similar to that, children just in awe and inspired to see little girls looking at my daughter out there, absolutely killing it, thinking that, hey, I could do that.
She's a role model for sure.
It's like, it's just what a life, what a life.
In terms of female empowerment, because I don't think you guys ever really started it with that in mind. I think it's just, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just that was the team. You all decided it could have just as easily been some boys in the team. It just happened not to be. But I think you guys have become a bit of an icon of female empowerment.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's my wife and my daughter out there, and Brooke, as you mentioned, Brooke Barrett, she leads our therapeutic riding programming now. She's a graduate of the University of South Alabama. She went into therapeutic sports recreation, so she could continue this work from a preteen years when she followed with
Equine Assisted World podcast. Actually, I think.
Yeah, she's just a beautiful person. But to see her out there, my wife and my daughter feeling that, and then having the background of working with her and seeing the need in the world from people and being willing to share that, it's just, we've got a different thing going. There's something, it's not just performance. There's a whole lot of heart behind it that's been built for decades.
Naturally, because you've got, you talked about this one autistic boy, getting him to be standing up on the running horse and pulling stunts. I remember seeing at your show, which you were actually still running as a backyard fundraiser at that point, Tim, the African-American young man who had the traumatic brain injury. And I watched you guys able to get him up in a Viking costume, able to handle an act with the staff and the spear.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
you
He's an
know,
incredible character, incredible guy. We love him, and
with a
hopefully we
soundtrack of a
continue
rap song that he had written.
that he had written. Right.
You
Yeah.
know, people just don't do this kind of thing. You talk about
No.
heart. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So just backtrack a little bit. So you said
Sure.
COVID hit for a while, the therapeutic program collapsed. You've since rebuilt it, clearly.
It never collapsed. It just
Okay.
shrunk to much smaller measures. We've got kids that have been with us since they were in preschool.
Okay.
One of our girls is a professor now at the University of Florida,
Wow.
who started in our program. So we don't want to lose anybody. So a few of
So,
those
so
people that
here's the
stay in
question.
it.
But you said you had to rethink. Okay. And you say you went to a circus. That
Mhm.
sounds like there were a bunch of small steps that you've sort of left out, because it's a hard thing to take one's act out there. You didn't have a sort of existing track record of. I know that Sise had been riding in that equestrian show some years before, and so on and so on. But it's another thing to then go to a professional outfit and say, "We need a job. We're amazing. Give us a job." How did you do that?
Well, the connection with the family made that possible, and he knew the quality of what we could produce, and so that was an easy one. We got lucky on the next one, the West Virginia Renaissance Festival. We had a friend that suggested us to them. They were a small fair and they wanted something new, so we went up and did it, and they had no idea what they were getting. They were very well pleased. So, so that was pretty much it. Happened just that quickly. Honestly, there was not a lot. We were in a very tough situation at the time. The property that we were one, we were bottoming out in every direction. We had spent every dime of our savings just to keep things going. So it was serious conversations about, hey, do we get rid of some horses? We try this again later, that kind of thing. So Equestrian Chaos saved Sise's School of Equestrian Arts. We would have closed. We did not have to. But once EC got on the road, we hit that next job. Every job we've done, somebody saw us and wants us. It's just that unique and that different. So that's how fast
What's
it
your
happened.
show circuit currently?
Right now, we do Florida to Oregon, Washington, Ohio, Texas. I mean, it's a big loop. I think we did 2,800 miles out to Oregon, Washington, 2,400 miles back to Ohio, another 1,000 back here, 1,000 down to Florida. We're heading to Texas in a week and a half for 3 weekends out there very soon. That'll be another 900 miles or so. So we are cooking. The goal is to, right now, it's just been amazing to be able to breathe. We've
Yeah.
always we've had some help along the way for sure, some great help, but no change your life. Okay, you can do this now. Help. We've got the funding and the budgeting to have employees. We got that's never happened. So we've always been earning it. So then we turned around and to see Equestrian Chaos all of a sudden earn it. And again, we're starting in a field we don't know. There's all that. I mean, people have been performing for 20 years to the point where we are jumping in at, at that level. So we don't know what the rates are. We don't know, so we've done very well in the last 3 years, finding out our value and our worth and pushing. And so in the long run, the funding from Equestrian Chaos, we take donations from every show that we do that goes directly to the school, as well as our contract prices. Everything funnels right back into the nonprofit organization to try and keep it alive and going. And we are making progress. We're finally able to do some work on the new property. We have a beautiful 20-acre property that we'll be able to develop now, to put the things we need in place to do the kind of work we were doing before. But yeah, we still keep it going. We have about 14 special needs students that come to our program when we're home. We want to cut our road time down. Right now, we're on the road better than 8 months, which is too long. We want to do 6 and 6 and be able to keep it going, and then eventually have the staff we need to run both for this at the same time, so we can keep the word going out, keep expanding the awareness, showing it off in a big way, and then bringing it home and growing it deeper and bigger and better. So it's exciting. It's fun.
It is exciting. So people listening and watching, I'm talking to you, listeners and watchers. You can donate to Equestrian Chaos. You can help them with their nonprofit special needs work, because what I've seen is you set people free. The mind blowing with that, that's not a flippant use of the word. Radical life change that I've seen you guys bring into the lives of people who had been written off, like Tim after his life-shattering traumatic brain injury, where I know he was being scouted, as a pro football player, not from a wealthy family, African-American Southern boy, made good through football, getting scouted on that track, and then wham, and in a wheelchair for life, and barely able to talk, and unable to be independent. And Rocky, the impossible nonverbal autistic boy that you got being a star in the show, and numerous others that I've seen. There just aren't many people out there giving opportunities like this, where it's not just like, be the best you can be and all those cliches. It's doing stuff that if you were able-bodied and neurotypical, you might very, very well never be able to do.
That's a big bragging point for them.
It's a massive bragging point, and you should brag the Jesus out of it, because I see some good programs out there. I've never seen anything like you guys.
Wow.
And you knocked me, in Texas they say, I shat twice and fell down in it.
That's very Texas. Yeah, well, we feel that way. We know, we've come to know that through it. We know the value of it. We are excited to watch it grow. We're looking generationally now. My daughter's growing up. She's 18. Brooke is on her way. There is no reason we can't drive this thing to influence thousands more lives in the same way that Tim felt like a superstar on top of that horse. He's on the stage. He's in the limelight again.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a moment. Anyone who's ever been there knows that's a moment you hold on to. It's one of the ones you talk about at the end of your days, So we want those moments for as many people as we can get them.
Yeah. Validation, self-belief. So the obvious question now is, where's it going? This is one of the hottest shows, equestrian shows that's out there in the world. Where's it going? What are you going to do with it? What's next?
We are continuing to book shows. We are working to build enough shows in a shorter period where we can spend more time at home growing the program. While we are on the road, though, we have programs where we do trainings. We can do trainings for clinics. If you're out there and your therapeutic horseback riding program may be dragging a little bit, or it's not working the way you want, or you just want to try something spicy, new, something different, find us, keep in touch with us. Once we settle into a place, a lot of the gigs that we do performing keep us in an area for a month or two or longer. So that gives us opportunities. And most of the time we perform are on the weekends. So our hope is to get out there and to find other organizations that need this kind of training and help. We can bring programming in for you that's established that we've done, show you ways to change things up to give new people an opportunity, maybe make you feel comfortable doing things that you weren't before, helping train horses. So we're looking to do a lot of that work on the road. And even in the circuit, we're traveling with other performers and vendors who travel the same circuits, and they have special needs population in those circuits. So we have kids at each of the fairs that we work with in the time. So they're getting an opportunity for something that they don't have because of their transient lifestyle. And the horses are kind of a in one place thing, for most people. So it's an opportunity for them to taste it. Then we can bring them up through the ranks. They can we can introduce other people to helping people. We bring the program to the stage, introduce that community. There's more people now that see how well this works, this communication between horse and humans. So that's where we're at. We're out there just pushing everything we do.
Well, I'm hoping that you guys will go international. And I was talking to your wife about this. So, we spoke a couple of years ago about getting Equestrian Chaos to do a show of the Horseboy story, which I still would like. Recently, last year, there's a special needs theatre in London called Chicken Shed, because it actually started in a chicken shed, and
Nice.
it's now become this huge, huge thing. And they now also are affiliated with a university there where they have the first degree program for performing arts for the special needs. And I feel that's a direction you guys could also logically go, because you could really train people, I think, how to work in the circus arts, not just with horses, in so many ways, also with special needs. And I want them to do the show of the horse boy because their cast is about half autistic. And
Wow.
I really want to see what they do with that story. But what they lack is understanding of the horse and understanding of how you would bring that experience that would look a little bit like Equestrian Chaos into like a London theatre. And I was chatting with Sise about this, and she said, "Oh well, she immediately goes, oh well, here's the solution." And she goes, "Right, well,
Yeah.
you put them on vaulting barrels, which you then have,
Yeah.
to look like horses. You can move those, and then those are, your Mongolian riders or your spirits or your, and I'm like, yeah, you guys need to be consultants on this. Okay, that's clear.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
She
I'm hoping
lightning thoughts on
get you guys to
that one.
London.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, we'd love to. We've had a couple staffs. We had somebody from Rydon Festival interest one time. We had something out of Brazil interest. So there's something gonna hit out there, but we'd love to do anything with you, Ru. That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. It's so, viewers, listeners, equestrianchaos.com, they are a non-profit. There is a donate button, I believe. Donate to them, because this is work. For example, if you've got a birthday coming up or something, get your friends to donate to them as a birthday gift to you, because I frankly have not seen in all the 20 years that I've been doing this work, I haven't seen anything as badass as Equestrian Chaos, including my own work, by the way. I thought I was
Well,
pretty badass until I
yes,
met,
sir. Indeed you are. Indeed you are. But like-minded birds, man.
you know, this idea of expanding what is possible so far outside. People talk about outside the box and that kind of cliche. It's like you created your own boxes, threw them away, created new ones, threw those ones away, and then created a parallel universe, in fact.
Yeah,
You
yeah. And
know,
then stood on the opposite of a box, a quantum box, and stood outside running around it. Yeah,
have you
it's
guys thought about doing life coaching as well? Because I feel that the way you have done it sort of on a wish and a prayer financially, where you never had the silver spoon, you never had the big organization backing you, you never had any of that. And yet you did this show that was just so incredibly polished on little resources and so on. I, I, I feel that people could consult with you guys about how to get their lives unstuck.
it's I love people. I love them. We're so deep and so different, and yet so the same. And it seems to be it just kind of follows in the course of what we're doing. We've had a lot of influence on people's lives from the experiences they've had with our family that
Yeah.
are tangible and leave a mark. So yeah, I don't know where that goes, but we're always happy to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as we sort of draw to a close here, you started your whole life with this within a spiritual context, although you yourself, by if I get this right, were not so personally religious. I mean, to some degree, but it was more that was the structure of that church that was around you at the time that created that camp. But of course, later the Jehovah's Witnesses got their teeth into your jugular, but then you managed to extract yourself but came away with some great life skills. where are you at now spiritually? What's your spirituality? And what tips have you got for people who are feeling stuck, who are feeling that they can't?
You can. You absolutely can. However, we can beat that thought into you, you can't. You're not stuck. There is opportunity. And if you look around in the world, you will see people with far less opportunity than you have making it. They're out there. You can absolutely do it. You have to be patient, kind to yourself. You got to forgive yourself and your ignorances. You have to have a, a purpose. Find a purpose. Without it, you'll be forever lost. You've got to find some kind of purpose, and that can be any number of things, but you'll know it. Find a purpose and ask people who have found a purpose. Talk to folks like yourself and me who have
Talk
found a
to
real
folks who
purpose.
found a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, talk to folks who found a purpose, because you may not know how to get there. You may not even know what strikes you until you've had a conversation with somebody who knows the right questions to ask. You can't see yourself as well as you think you do. So it's always
Yes.
good to talk to somebody.
I think, and it's interesting because you're the MC and your job is to communicate the show. And I've watched you do it. I've also watched you structure it. I've watched you create the music for it. I've watched you create the backdrops for it. I've watched you create the aesthetic. I've
Yeah.
watched you run the thing, develop the thing. You are a very good organizer. But yeah, back to the spirituality. What's your relationship with the big God at this point?
I'm grateful for this incredible life I have. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think if you live in gratitude, you're already on your way to spirituality. I think that gratitude gives you the opportunity to see the beauty in each person, regardless of their shortcomings. I take the principles that I learned from the life of Jesus, the idea of total peace and Zen, whatever. All those religions have thoughts that have spawned from men or from some higher power with ideas that are great and some that aren't. You have to source it out. You have to try it. But there's nothing will ever go wrong with finding a purpose, lending a helping hand, sharing your heart with someone, or making the opportunity for someone to feel comfortable enough to share their heart with you. If you do those things, it's going to lead to something better, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it stings, it hurts. So spiritually, I'm just looking forward to the future. I don't know what the big guy has in store, but I'm grateful for what I have so far. If he's had a part in that, I'm really thankful. I'm looking forward to being an exciting ride.
It seems that what you're saying is a formula of cultivate gratitude and seek active mentorship, talk to people who have a life purpose. It seems that you've almost coming up with that as an equation.
Mm-hmm. That's that's
Like,
that's the that's the if there's a third part, it's don't quit ruminating the negative things in your life or the bad problems in your head. That would be the third part. You got to shut that shit down somehow.
and how do you
Everybody
shut
feels
that
bad
shit down?
trying over and over again.
Yeah.
You made the wrong decision. Something you did bit you in your ass, and your wife told you shouldn't have done that. You're going to have to let it go at some point. You can't be upset about it forever. You got to
Yeah.
roll past it. Same thing. Anything can happen in your life, but there is tomorrow. There is today. There are the people standing around you that are attached to you and by you, and you've got to let. I hear so many times people just say the same thing over and over, and it's the bad thing that they have in their life. You've got
Mm-hmm.
to cut that cycle. So, yeah, those three things: find a purpose, talk to someone with a purpose, don't regurgitate your troubles over and over again. Tell your confidant, and then let it be. And then,
I feel that,
that's
yeah, that gratitude certainly helps me with that. You're probably familiar with this phrase from the Bible because you spent so much time in the
it.
Bible. But from New Testament one, the idea of turning the other cheek if someone slaps
Yeah,
you.
right.
And that's always been interpreted. I always had a problem with that one. It's like, no, man, just
Mm-hmm.
punch him in the face,
No way. Yeah,
and
it's a bat.
kick him in the nuts. And then I was listening to the work of, I don't know if you've ever come across Neville Goddard. He was a really interesting sort of early law of attraction dude who was active in the 40s and 50s and 60s. If you go on YouTube, you can find recordings by him. And what's really interesting about him is he interprets the whole thing through a New Testament lens, but not in any dogmatic way. In fact, what he's saying is the entire Bible is just an allegory for effectively the law of attraction. And he explains turning the other cheek as when you're looking in a direction that slaps you in the face, turn your face and look in a direction of where you actually want to go. And because where your attention is where you're going to go. You're going to move towards the thing you're looking at. You know,
That's a good way of looking at it.
Energy goes where attention flows, where attention goes, or whatever. So you literally must, it's telling you, no, not here, like touching the hot stove. Turn your gaze. Really, it would be better if they said gaze.
Yeah, I could take that. Yeah, that works. That works well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, turn the other cheek, look the other way, go where you're wanted. And that's a huge thing that we've learned. You know, if you're forcing it to happen, you have to recognize whether you are or you're not. You have to have the insight to be able to tell. But man, if you're forcing something, you're probably not in the right place. Because when it fits, you know, when it comes right and somebody's after you and they want you, that's where you go. Make sure you move when that happens. You know, but
well, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to nag my listeners to donate.
I appreciate that. We could certainly make good use of it.
Yes. And more than that, I really, really strongly urge anyone who's listening or watching this, go and check out an Equestrian Chaos show.
Absolutely.
You might think, oh yeah, I've seen circus acts. You haven't seen one like this.
We'll be in Gladewater, Texas here the next 3 weekends starting November 5th or December 5th. We'll have 3 weekends of shows out there at the
Yule
Viking Festival. It's near Tyler. Okay. It's in a town called Gladewater. It's the Yule Viking Festival. We've got 3 weekends of shows out there. We're going to kill it out there. They've been incredible to us. That's one of the ones where you like, wow, they built their stage for us. They call it the Equestrian Arena. I mean, the Chaos Arena. They put some beautiful stalls up for our horses. I mean, they set up our area for our camp and our rigs, and
that's running through December 2025.
Through December. Yep. December 2025. That'll be our last performances this year. And then we'll kick off. We'll have some announcements about next year's performances coming up real soon, but we'll be all over the country again.
Okay. I'll get on my Texas people.
Yeah.
To go up
Sounds
there.
Good.
All right,
man.
Well, listen, my friend, it's been a real pleasure. I can't wait to reconnect again in person soon.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. It'll be good to hang.
Like I say, you and Sise are massive heroes of mine. I'm in awe.
Maybe goes both ways, brother.
London project going.
Goes both ways.
Yeah. All right. Well, until the next time, equestrianchaos.com. You can find them there. If you're listening now in December 2025, you're in the South, head on over to Gladewater, is it?
Gladewater, Texas, the Yule Viking Festival.
Fest. And near Tyler, get your mind blown.
Yeah, come on. We'll do it. Appreciate you, Rupert, man. It was awesome.
Okay. Till the next time.
All right. Later.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you did, please help us to make more. Please like, subscribe, tell a friend, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, please go to my website, rupertisaacson.com. And if you'd like to find out about our certification courses with autism, education, horsemanship, everyday shamanism, there's a whole range of cool stuff. Putting a show together like this is not an easy task. If you'd like to support us, please consider going to our Patreon page and showing us some love there. Even the smallest donation, it really helps us to keep the good content coming. So go to rupertisaacson.com and click on the Patreon link. Not to mention our excellent merch. Please go to our shop and check out some of our really cool rock and roll themed merch, t-shirts, hoodies, all that sort of thing. rupertisaacson.com, it's all there. I can't wait for our next guest and also to meet you there. In the meantime, remember, live free, ride free.